We dissect Gen Z like a fascinating new species and talk endlessly about the friction between millennials and boomers. Yet sandwiched right in the middle, born roughly between 1965 and 1980, is an entire generation that exists in the shadows, almost invisible. They are your older coworkers who quietly do their jobs without complaining. They are the parents who occasionally seem a bit detached. They are the architects who physically built the internet, yet rarely post about their own lives on it. Their psychology is often misunderstood because they actively refuse to explain themselves, complain, or seek validation. In a culture of constant performance, they have created a demographic black hole. They navigate the world through a series of contradictions. They fiercely refuse to ask for help, yet show up for everyone else in a crisis. They have zero company loyalty, yet possess an unrelenting work ethic. And the people who built our digital world are exactly the same ones who firmly refuse to be visible on it. This invisibility is a heavily armored survival strategy. It was forged in a decade of empty houses and high-stakes consequences, creating a specific psychological blueprint that explains how they survive in the modern world. Consider that first contradiction, their relationship with support. A typical Gen Xer will stubbornly refuse to ask for help with a problem, yet they will quietly drop everything to help someone else the moment a crisis hits. To see where this comes from, picture coming home from school in 1978. You are 8 years old. The house is empty because both parents are working. There are no smartphones, no Ring cameras, and no way to check in. You make a snack, do your homework, and wait. This data shows the massive scale of the latchkey kid phenomenon. A study published in the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry found that by 1984, approximately 7 million children between ages 5 and 13 were regularly unsupervised after school. This created a high contingency environment. Discipline linked your actions directly to the consequence. There was no adult buffer time to negotiate feelings. Living there trained their brains to predict outcomes in real time, which is why Gen X tends to think 3 steps ahead. But the flip side is seeking out peers. Tight bonds were formed with neighborhood friends out of necessity when parents were absent. This self-reliance is a permanent adaptation to a childhood where help wasn't always coming. They'll rush to help because they know what being stranded feels like, but asking for help feels like admitting they can't handle the world alone. Then there is the matter of their professional lives. Gen Xers often display zero loyalty to the companies they work for, yet they maintain an unrelenting, archaic work ethic. They grew up watching adults talk about family stability, only to witness the soaring divorce rates of the 1970s and 80s tear their domestic lives apart. They also witnessed profound economic instability. They watched their parents give everything to corporate employers, only to be hit with pink slips and sudden layoffs a moment the economy shifted. At the societal level, they watched authority figures struggle through major crises, from Watergate to the economic crashes and the AIDS epidemic. Their trust in institutions was broken before they even entered the workforce. This experience led to a psychological mechanism known as defensive pessimism. When rules change without warning, you learn to constantly expect the rug to be pulled out. Their cynicism isn't the same as laziness. Their work ethic was forged through raw adult responsibilities at an early age, delivering newspapers at 5 a.m., bagging groceries, and navigating high-stakes jobs that required them to function like adults. Because institutions repeatedly failed them, they transferred their loyalty away from job titles and entirely toward their own personal competence. They use irony as a shield to keep the corporate world at arm's length, but they weaponize their own skills to stay safe. They know they can't control whether they get laid off, but they can control whether they are the most capable person in the room when it happens. Finally, we see the generation that built the digital world actively avoiding a presence on it. Unlike today's world of instant search results, acquiring information used to require physical effort and time. Gen X spent hours in libraries hunting through card catalog drawers for a single book that might contain an answer. Cognitive psychologists call this process deeper encoding. Because information had a physical cost, what they learned became more permanently integrated into their memory. If a bicycle chain slipped or a television flickered, they flipped it upside down and figured it out. This built a mechanical intuition and a belief that with enough patience and a screwdriver, you could master the physical world yourself. They carried that offline mindset into the digital age. They learned early on that privacy was safety. If you made a mistake as a kid, a few people knew, and then it was over. They stay offline not because they find technology confusing, but because they understand that visibility equals vulnerability. Now, as parents, that childhood isolation influences how they raise their own families. Many Gen Xers overcompensate, becoming highly involved parents to ensure their children never feel the isolation they did. Yet quietly, they worry. They fear that by providing constant supervision and allowing their kids' lives to be documented online, they have made the next generation more dependent on external validation. Gen X is the final demographic to grow up with long stretches of boredom and problem-solving that couldn't be outsourced to a search engine. That is the nature of a bridge. It doesn't ask for attention. It just quietly bears the weight, does the work, and holds things together. Generation X has turned self-reliance into a quiet, enduring art form. Their invisibility is a choice, one made by a generation that knows exactly